Hello, esteemed judges, Penn community. We're here to represent the Faith and Farmers Winter Market Initiative. My name is Billy Werner.
I'm Jason Laughlin, and our partners are Patrick Christmas and Arianne Sellers.
So our mission is fairly straightforward. So we'd like to improve access to fresh food in low-income communities, and we'd like to do this by creating winter farmers markets based in places of worship in Philadelphia. So why winter? We realized that as we looked at the markets that are out there and the programs that already exist, that there is a little bit of a gap in service during the winter. Most of these markets are seasonal. There are a small handful of year-round markets, which we'll get into more depth in a minute. And why faith-based organizations? Well, we realize that in a lot of the communities where there is low access to healthy food, the religious organizations in those communities present the main social hub, the main trusted leader of the community. So we assume that this would be the best way to reach the most number of people in a place that they're comfortable.
Now, the next obvious question is why farmers markets? I know you just heard some statistics about obesity in Philadelphia. We're going to throw a few more. As you can see, of the 10 largest cities in the country, Philadelphia has the highest rate of obesity and the highest poverty rate. There have been a lot of studies that make a very, very clear connection between a whole host of health problems and healthy eating. The people who don't have easy access to supermarkets with fresh quality foods have issues with heart disease, diabetes, the health of pregnant women, and of course, obesity. This is obviously a well-known problem in the city. There's a lot of organizations working on it, the Food Trust being one of them, and they've done a great job with the Healthy Corner Stores initiative, which has been putting fresh produce in corner stores. The issue is just it's such a large problem, there's room for even more development to try to resolve the food access issue in Philadelphia.
So what you see now is a map that was given to us by the Department of Health, and it links poverty with food access. So the red areas are areas that the Department of Health has considered low or no access, low to no walkable access to healthy foods, and also areas of high poverty. So one thing that's important to note, though, is that it's low to no access. So this doesn't really mean that there are no supermarkets in these communities, no markets, but if you take the population density into consideration, there's still a need there. So as Jason mentioned, there are great programs that exist in the city, but there's always room for more.
Now, when you talk about a low access area, part of the issue in Philadelphia is the dispersal of supermarkets in the city is very concentrated in the University City area, Center City, frankly, where a lot of the people with money are going to be living, which creates food deserts like this area in southwest Philadelphia. So if you don't have a lot of supermarkets, where are you going to get your food? The corner store. And the corner stores like this one are just littered throughout Philadelphia. They're easy to get to, they're small, they're literally at virtually every corner. So it's very convenient to go here and pick up whatever you need to get through the day or the week for food. And if you wanted produce, fresh fruits, fresh vegetables, what can you get? This is the inside of a corner store in southwest Philly. You can see the selection is sparse and limited. Those are some oranges kind of to the left of the screen there. You can't see it in this picture, but underneath is the rest of their produce section, which is a freezer full of frozen vegetables. And what's really important in this picture isn't just the food that's being sold, the limited supply of fresh vegetables, but what you see behind it, which is processed foods, salty foods, things that are really not very healthy at all. And the majority of shelves in this store are stocked with items like that you see.
And so I'm sure this is an image that a lot of people will recognize right away. This is a year-round farmers market that exists in Rittenhouse. Now, why are we showing this to you? You've seen it before. Winter markets are possible. Clearly, there's a customer base. Clearly, there are products to be sold. A lot of the questions that came up when we presented this idea to people was, well, there's clearly not that much produce in the winter, so how is this sustainable? Well, I think there's evidence that it is sustainable if partnerships can be made and action is taken. And there's no reason why an image like this can't exist in some of the communities we're targeting.
Now, this shows you where farmers markets are in Philadelphia. Those black spots represent a farmers market. There's around 60 in the city, run by several different organizations. And as you can see, some of them do exist in underprivileged neighborhoods, so they can be sustained. Now, what happens around November and December, however, is all of those black spots disappear. You've got down to around 6 farmers markets that are year-round, and none of them are in areas that are considered unprivileged or in a food desert. So our program hopes to fill that gap of what happens come November and December when what supplies there are through farmers markets essentially disappears.
So here's the basic overview of what we'd like to do. Create 2 winners farmers markets that are hosted at faith-based organizations in areas of poverty and limited healthy food access in Philadelphia. And there are 3 main components to these markets: availability, a program of events, and creating sustainable partnerships between community organizations and farmers and vendors. Now, first, availability. This is the obvious one. So we want to get the fresh food into the neighborhoods where it doesn't exist right now. So what we want to do is ensure that not only produce gets to these neighborhoods, but also meat and dairy. There are vendors that are prepared to carry these items. The issue is getting them on board and getting the food there.
Now, it's not just a matter of creating access. You could put a cornucopia in front of somebody, but if they're not used to the foods in that horn of plenty, they probably will not eat them. So what we need to do is educational programs through events such as cooking demonstrations at the farmers market, presentations from nutritionists, brochures with some recipes in them that tell people, you can take these products and make easy, delicious, and healthy meals with them and show them how to incorporate them into their daily diet.
So we have taken steps to partner with some groups that were enthusiastic about our idea. First and foremost is the Food Trust. They're basically the guiding light through this project. They have the most expertise. They know what it takes to set up a market. They know what goes into it. They know what to look for in neighborhoods to make sure that the market is sustainable. They know who to work with.
The second is Partners for Sacred Places. This is an organization that collaborates with faith-based organizations in the city on a whole host of issues, not just nutrition issues. What's also to our benefit, they're actually very interested in this program, by the way. We've met with these people. And they're interested in cultivating a relationship with the Food Trust. So our group, and along with these 2 organizations, lays a great foundation for the farmers markets to spring out of.
And finally, we received a pledge of support from the city. We met with Reverend Malcolm Bird, who is the interim director of the Mayor's Office of Faith-Based Initiatives, and he was really excited about the program. He pointed out to us that he knows of many congregations that are trying to start health initiatives in their neighborhoods. They realize that there is a problem. They realize there's a problem with access. So he was really excited about working with us, actually asked us to come back to him when we had partners in place and had more of the idea fleshed out. So we're happy to do that and get him on board to be a second liaison to the religious community and help us form these relationships. So another question that often comes up is, why would a religious organization take the risk and go through all the trouble of hosting this kind of market? There are 2 main incentives that we think would be a great way for these organizations to get involved. So first and foremost, when we work with the Food Trust, they already have a program in place called the Philly Food Bucks Vouchers Program. So what this does is shoppers that are on SNAP that use access cards to buy their groceries can receive $2 worth of market vouchers for every $5 they spend at the market. So this essentially increases their purchasing power by 40%. It should be noted that these vouchers can only be used for produce purchases. So what this does is it puts more money in the pocket of the congregation. So they can spend more money on the other products at the markets, and it also just saves them a bit of time and allows them to be involved with their community through their religious organization, feeding their families through them.
We mentioned earlier some of the educational events we want to have through this program. Our hope would be, for instance, when we talked about the cooking demonstration, the cook, the chef, would be somebody from within the congregation or within the community. So it would be members of the congregation reaching out to their own community. That's a great opportunity and a great way to get the message across. It also gives the churches or whatever other faith-based organization we're working through a chance to be a center for the community, not just for their congregation, but for their neighbors, people that live around that area.
So the incentives for producers is fairly straightforward. These are new markets. One of the things that the Food Trust really liked about our program was the idea that these markets can be used to pre-develop year-round markets in some of these areas. So producer gets on board, gets in the ground floor, then they have the opportunity to expand their business to a year-round market should it succeed.
The obvious thing that could make this work is there's a congregation that's right there, a large number of people that are going to be at that location, and it's a built-in customer base for the farmers. So it creates a market where one doesn't exist at that time of year.
And finally, logically, you grow your business in this way, you can potentially expand production, reach more people, and have a larger off-season revenue.
Now, we're running a little short on time, so I'll speed through this. Very quickly, we did take the time to visit some of the neighborhoods in Philadelphia that would potentially benefit from this program. It would be up to, eventually, the Food Trust and the Department of Health to make this happen and to decide the locations if this moves forward. But we looked at areas in Southwest Philadelphia, Point Breeze, West Allegheny. These are all areas with high density, large congregations, and a need for food access.
And then finally, our budget. As you can see, the most expensive line items are staff time and our event series. The final item on there is promotion, which you can sink an unlimited amount of funds in. So should we get the seed money, most of the funding that we receive will go into promotion.
All right, we appreciate your time. If you have any questions with the program, we're happy to try and answer them. We're all looking at you, aren't we?
Yeah, it's funny being a judge on this. So, Nikki on our staff just told me that you guys came by to talk to her. I guess, you know, we do run a couple of markets through the winter, and it's true that there is more produce than people might imagine, but it's not the what you think of as a farmer's market. One of my concerns, maybe I'll slap on this, is launching a winter market doesn't have the pizzazz, making the customer, have you thought about making it customer enthusiastic when what's being offered is root vegetable, like usually you shouldn't think of a farmer's market, you're thinking peaches and corn.
Sure.
Right, and we did, like you said, we did talk to Nikki about that, one of the staff at the Food Trust. And I think that just sort of, the main initiative that made us focus on the winter was just the complete lack. And we thought, well, it may be a little bit harder, but let's try to address that. And then with the hope that if our market were to catch on, it then becomes a year-round thing. So I think it's kind of a two-pronged answer. One, there'd be a lot of education. A lot of the information we'd be handing out at churches. I mean, part of our promotional material would be brochures to really inform people of what to expect from a winter's market. And that should probably be started well in advance of the market opening, several months in advance. And then secondly, I think looking at this as sort of a seed for the year-round market. If it can catch on even a little bit over the winter and address that winter need, then you've got a new neighborhood that has a year-round market, and then all the peaches and the corn and the tomatoes are there come April and May. We also would think that we'd want to reach out to people who are able to provide meats, grains, dairy, because I agree with you, a table of turnips is not the most exciting thing.
Well, I like turnips. Also, we did address that with Nikki, and her idea was to initially launch the off-season markets at the end of the current season. So these may start in, I don't know, August, September, when some of the more quote-unquote attractive produce is still available, and then just extend through the winter months. Yeah. That was Nikki's idea. Yeah.
I agree with Nikki.
Okay. So do we. Yeah.
In your research for this project, did you uncover, there used to be in Philadelphia something called United We Stand. It was the United Methodist Church in partnership with Black farmers from the South, and they used to have farmers market in low-income communities in Philadelphia. I wondered in your research if you uncovered that project and if there were any lessons learned from that.
Reverend Bird actually did bring that up, and he brought up the topic of why this doesn't exist already, which is the first obvious question that people have. And he brought up that in the past there wasn't a great deal of parity at the negotiating table, so the vendor side of the equation was getting a little bit more out of the program than the religious organization side of the program, and he mentioned that was a lot of the reason why negotiations have stalled in the past and why these projects haven't been sustainable over a long period of time. So that's the information we had about why it has worked in the past or what didn't work when it was attempted.
Is there any data from other cities where this type of program may have been implemented that does point to an actual decrease in obesity or some of the areas that you guys identified as the core problems?
There are a lot of studies that were done on different health aspects in relation to access to fresh foods, not specifically farmers markets necessarily, but just access to any source of fresh food. I can't quote statistics to you, but I know there was one done in East Harlem that compared residents of East Harlem to, I think it was the Upper East Side, and showed that there was a correlation there between their access to fresh foods and obesity issues. So they're definitely, and that's just one of a number of studies that have been done on that area.
And as initiatives like the Healthy Corner Store initiative has progressed over time, there's been a decrease in, I think the last group mentioned a 3% decrease in childhood obesity, which you can correlate to these programs actually getting off the ground. So I think access initiatives, and the important thing about our program is that there's an educational component. There's a part of it that helps highlight why healthy food choices matter. And I think that gets to the crux of the issue, and that's where you're going to see a real change in habit. Because we understand that, as Jason pointed out during the presentation, we understand that just having the access to the food is not going to get people to change their dietary habits. Anyone who's been on a diet knows it's hard to make that initial change. So we think that the event part of our program is the real linchpin in making this work and actually seeing an impact in the community.
I was interested in some of the numbers in terms of the target area that you have in the three churches that I think I'm seeing here. How large are their congregations? Are these areas targeted because of particular areas where the farmers markets disappear over time? So what kinds of numbers?
Yeah. Pat can speak to that.
Well, Philly has a fair number of quote unquote mega churches. Deliverance up at 20th and Lehigh, which is up in the West Allegheny neighborhood, has upwards of 5,000-6,000 members. And when Jason and I drove over there 2 or 3 weeks ago, we were told that on any given weekend service, they will have 3,000 or 4,000 members, actually in the sanctuary. And that was part of our thinking for why through the winter this partnership between farmers and these places of worship would be critical, because there's a captive consumer base when you have that many people in one spot. In addition to the fact that these farmers markets are a bit of a social event as well as a shopping opportunity, just like farmers markets in any other neighborhood.
And the other two churches, similar, are they also very large congregations?
In Point Breeze, actually, the two churches we targeted were a bit smaller, and the reason we gave ourselves some latitude in size of church is that when we spoke to Dr. Bird, he really emphasized the fact that depending on the willingness of a given congregation and their leadership to get on board with us, that could matter as much as just the number of congregants. So we tried not to look too closely at actual targets right now. We just wanted to get an idea for what's out there. So we'd have to balance those things: interest from the church and size.
I'm sorry. There's also the issue that a lot of these mega churches that have these enormous congregations, they're a great choice, but at the same time, a lot of the congregants of these institutions commute, so they're not directly from that community. They could be people that started in that community, that left the community, and would still go to the religious organization they've attended for years and years. So. Although you reach the largest number of people in some of these huge organizations, smaller community-based churches actually for that reason might be a better route to go moving forward, because you're not guaranteed, but there's a higher likelihood that those are people that are actually invested in that community, that do their shopping in that community, that would like to be able to do their shopping in that community. So that was another point that we thought of as we were deciding on congregations and how large they should be.
What do you think are some of your biggest obstacles? If you were to have this fund, what are going to be some of the obstacles to actually get this to make a difference?
I think one is what you already mentioned, just the fact that the winter market isn't as sexy as a summer market, and is trying to work with that and trying to inform people. I think secondly is just education. It's not just changing, you're changing people's eating habits, which is probably the hardest, but you're also trying to create a routine. I live in the Society Hill neighborhood, and it's kind of a habit. Every Sunday in the summer, I go down to the farmer's market. I can see it out my window. It's really easy, and I've gotten in the habit over years of living there of going to that market. So it's not just creating the habit of eating food like that, it's also creating the habit of thinking, oh, I can go to the community center or in the basement of my church, and I can pick up some food for the week. So I think that really initially we're going to expect that this is something that's going to need time to grow. That you have to have it there, and just give it time for a population to build up and get in the habit of eating these foods and going to these markets. I think those will be the biggest challenges.
And one big consideration, not really an obstacle, but one of the big things that Reverend Bird mentioned was that we really have to approach the churches and make it a part, really a part of their program. It's something that they will have full oversight. They can dictate when the market happens, what kind of recipes can be offered, really, because they have the best understanding of what their congregants are looking for. So it's not really an obstacle, but a huge consideration.
I'm assuming you're talking to the folks from Pitt Filling.
Well, it's...
They can find the market, yeah.
Yeah.
They had some good
We'll have a winter market tab. We'll discuss this.
Time for an additional question?
The huge thing was that Partners for Sacred Places is a national organization.
Mm-hmm. Yes. They are a national organization, and that would be great. Our thrust for this project was just in Philadelphia, but the sky's the limit. If it should work here, it can, hopefully work everywhere.
And it's worth mentioning very quickly, there actually are such markets in other cities in the country. Chicago actually has a very vibrant winter market scene. Some of them are in wealthier neighborhoods, some of them are more impoverished neighborhoods. But they've made it work there, and we've been in contact with an organization in Chicago that set those up. So there's definitely a kind of a precedent for this.
Jason brings up the Chicago markets, and they found that, speaking to the question about potential challenges, they found that their biggest challenge was just promotion, that a lot of people didn't know about the market. Their challenge was they could only have the market on Saturdays, which is clearly a day that, if you're working with a church, a lot of people are not going to be there on a Saturday. And they pointed out and really drilled down to tell us that it's all promotion. And so that's why in our budget, that's why I mentioned that the sky's the limit for promotion. You cannot have too much of it. So the more you put into it, hopefully the more you get out of it. So I guess that counts as another challenge we have moving forward, just making sure people know that it exists.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you all.